Hello ladies, this is the end of the day, November 7, 2020, and welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a lot done tomorrow when you listen to this. It's designed for you to listen as you work. And I don't have comments on the channel, but if you will click the link that I provide below, you can go over to my blog and listen to it in a very beautiful and pleasant atmosphere, and maybe interact a little bit on the comments. If you don't feel comfortable commenting with the Google there, you can email me on the left and I will post it for you, or if you'd just like to email me, I would be happy to talk with you. So ladies, today we're going to start with the most important thing, and especially I want to emphasize this. I just got off of the YouTube channels listening to Diamond and Silk today. They were very interesting, and they were talking about how if you pray, why are you still anxious? So you can't combine those two together, and they were encouraging people to pray, and I thought that was very effective. And one thing that we have to do, I talked to you about your appearance first thing because it kind of settles you. It kind of gives you a point, something to do. And many times when people are anxious, and this happens in the home a lot, no matter what the political climate in the home, sometimes ladies can just get a little anxious, and I've noticed that if you get off your routine, get off your schedule, that it can make you feel a little anxious, when children are little and there's a little change in the routine, or you've gone somewhere and had to spend the night somewhere else, they might be a little bit more fussy. It's the same with us. We're just a little more fussy when we're off of our game. And so I say start out by getting dressed. I don't care what's going on in the world. I don't care if there is, there's big, like we had this big, we're out here in Oregon, and moved here from Texas and been here 30 years now, and we had the big fire, and we had all that smoke for several weeks. Well, I decided to, why wait? You can't just stop living and wait out some of these things. I decided I'm just going to beat it. So I decided to get up in the morning and do a routine. And I made a list, and I have a master list, and my short list are things like, my daily work. My master list are things that I hope to get to eventually. And I decided we were not supposed to do anything that required too much exertion or heavy breathing because there was so much smoke in the air. So I closed all my doors, and I made homemade pumpkins out of fabric. And I must have made 100 of them, but 50 of them were toilet paper rolls that were just covered with a towel or something. And I found that on Pinterest, and Pinterest is a problem, It's like kryptonite to me, because I get on it and then my day is gone, and at the end of the day I say, well, thanks Pinterest. But I did figure out how to use the toilet paper rolls to just wrap fabric around, and I had 50 of those, and so now no one can find our toilet paper. So anyway, so I made all those, and what you see behind me, and that's made out of Minky Dot, which is a kind of a fleece fabric that I like, and it's very soft. And so you can't just sit there, because after this, and I've told you this time and time again on these videos, when this crisis is over, the state is going to push another crisis on you, because they're narcissists. They're going to find something to make you miserable. And I'd like to talk more about that right now, and I wanted to get into homemaking. Maybe I'll just go right into it. Let's talk a little bit about what they've put us through. All the governors of the states that are so strict and so shut down, those are Marxists. Those people are communists, because they don't love freedom, and they don't care about you. They don't care about people. The only reason they even keep you alive is so that you can make money that they can take. So here's why you shouldn't like them. I don't know why some of you people are still voting for them. And it's not a matter of which party they're at. It's what they do. A Democrat and a Republican, they're all just as bad if they are involved in taking away your freedom. So they've taken away our ability to travel. Now, we still did around here where I live on farmland. Everybody just kept going like they were, and shopping, traveling, everything. And they took away, they put travel restrictions on everyone. So they took away their travel, and then they took away their churches, and then they took away their friends and families because they restricted, visiting other people, and they restricted how many people you're supposed to have in your house. I'm not saying any of us even obeyed it. A lot of us just ignored it. But I'm just trying to build my case, that you need to be really careful not to cooperate with these people by being sure, make sure you don't ever elect them again. So, and then they put us, they took away our, they put us under house arrest almost. And then they took away our toilet paper. So, and then now that that's all over and we've survived all that, now they're going to torture us for a while with the political situation and keep you in a constant state of upheaval. Well, you can't function in the home like that. And any of you who are elderly, like I am, from the olden days, remember when you got all tied up in knots over some political situation. Back in the past, you all lived to regret the time you spent concerned about it, worried about it, wringing your hands over it, when you could have been spending time with your children. And those of you who have little children, that's a tragedy. They don't know about those things. This is, I believe that children should, this is a cardinal rule here. Children should be brought up to have a happy, carefree childhood free from worry and heavy responsibility. You can't have that television on constantly worrying those children and worrying yourself because they sense it. Do you know that even if you hold a child's hand, they sense whether you're happy and relaxed or not. They will be tugging at you more and more and more when they sense your attention. It's really important that you not pay any attention to it, because if you did what you could, if you voted and if you are praying, then you have done what you could. And if you're a fighter like I am, you just keep praying. I noticed something over the years when I prayed for things that shouldn't have happened, just was totally against God's will. And people do that. People, even in the Old Testament, there were people that were doing things against God's will, and God chastised them for it. He says, you're doing this against my will. This will happen. You're praying for other people, but they don't necessarily cooperate. But you're supposed to still send out a prayer, because it makes you faithful and it makes you close to God, and you will be compensated for that. So have faith in your prayers and have faith in God that He can make things right. Now for me, I've been a homemaker for over 50 years, a preacher's wife, a homeschooler, and my life has never been, it's always been the same. It's never changed financially. It's always been at the lower end of money, and even below low welfare. But my life has not changed. My duties remain the same. My life remains the same. My dedication to the home remains the same. And worrying about politics never did get my dishes done. And my life just didn't get easier by being overly concerned about it. And I know that everyone is. But I just would suggest you go watch I'll try to put the link of what I heard Diamond and Silk say on a live stream that they had. It's quite interesting. They can get a little salty sometimes, but I think that they had a real healthy response to people who were very upset and worried over the political situation. And I think it's really important. One of the things they said, of course, was, if you pray, then why are you still wringing your hands? So I think that's really important. And so I left the world around July the 7th. I left the world and I came home. I always wanted to really be home. I'm a homemaker, and I believe in Titus 2, but most people who are homemakers and even homeschoolers were concerned because so much of life had to take place in their car away from home. And we were always getting ready to go somewhere else. We were out as much as we were in, and I have finally decided to stay home. And I have really benefited from it. I believe I'm a little less anxious from it, and also the things that I look forward to are in the home. Of course, I'm out on a farm, and I have plenty of space, and I'm not like isolated in a little apartment or anything like that. But I always remembered when I was a teenager, Anwar Sadat, who was the president of Egypt, had written a book. I don't know what the name of the book is, and I don't have it, but he had written a book about his experience in a British prison, and he said it was there that he got to know Jesus Christ. He got to know God, he said, and it was the happiest, looking back, it was one of the happiest times of my life, and yet there he was, isolated, because really, you can have a lot of freedom, but in your mind, if you're stuck in a certain way of life and thinking, you can feel imprisoned. So I think it's really important as a homemaker not to feel imprisoned. And I have found that it wasn't the house and the home that was making, or the family that was making me feel in any way isolated or imprisoned. It was going out so much and collecting the negativity and the battle that's out there, having to come home and take me 3 hours to settle down and get focused and feel relaxed after being out there, because it wasn't just the traffic or finding a parking spot or trying to get gas or grocery shopping. It was also the noise inside of the stores. You have to understand a lot of that is kind of like propaganda, and you come home and then this ridiculous music and songs kind of swirl around in your head and can go on for days. Some people can pick it up, some people can't, but it used to bother me. Anyway, being at home made me focus on different things that I hadn't really taken too seriously before, and one was exercise. I found some exercise videos, and I've told you what they are, Fabulous 50s. She has several. You can just sit in a chair and exercise. If you are, even if you're 16, and these videos are for ladies of all ages, because the young and old should always interact together. We shouldn't be hanging around with one age group. We should all be, after all, family. They're not all one age group, are they? There's the baby, and then there's the teenagers, and then there's the parents and the grandparents, and we're all working together and for each other's success. And so even if you're a teenager and you're out of shape and overweight, just go to the Fabulous 50s, because that'll be easier on your body. And she is even a little fast for me. I don't do every single exercise in each set. I just try to do whatever I can. But for the chair exercises, if you're just starting and you haven't had exercise in a while, they're the absolute best, and they make you feel strong, and they make you feel more alive, and it has helped my mind. I'm able to, my recall is better sometimes. It's improving, and I believe my skin has improved a little bit too. And I never could understand why at my age I still had troubled skin, just like I did when I was a teenager. But the exercise has helped, I think. I feel it's a little bit different. Well, today I would like to read to you something out of the Bible that I have read to you before. And I hadn't thought too much about how to use this, but it's the one that says we are crushed but not, we are, what is it? We're afflicted but we're not crushed. And it was kind of poetic, where it would say, it's kind of like Proverbs, where it would say, this is this, but this is this. It would show the opposite. So I want to read it to you, and then I want to discuss a little bit about our attitudes and how we should improve the way we speak to one another. And usually I like to talk about how other people act and how we can handle the negative person or the contradictory person or a person that troubles everybody. But today we'll just talk about how you can improve, which is very helpful. That's enough, because it helps you identify where other people are probably tripping you up. And in the home, it's really important to get along harmoniously. And I think the best way I found growing up in a large family, the best, most harmonious times we had is when we weren't bothering each other. Everyone minding their own business, working with their own hands, like the Bible said, doing something quiet, being quiet and minding their own business. So I want to read this to you. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 7 to 10, I think. But we have this treasure in earthen jars, to show that the and that means in the Greek jars of clay, to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Now look at these little examples of the negative versus the positive. Okay. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Remember, Marilla told Anne and Anne of Green Gables, to despair is to turn your back on God. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. Now, that's just had, I've read this to you for several times, with a different aspect of it. And I think that it's so important for a Christian lady at home, especially a homemaker, not to let life beat her up, not to feel destroyed. And if she does feel destroyed, to get up and use it as a signal to be successful in something. Use every bit of the stress of the world, every bit of the tragedy going on in the world, every bit of the disappointment of the world, to lift yourself up, and as a signal to lift yourself up. Okay, well, we'll just go do something else. Okay, well, we'll just improve this. And I have often used that technique when someone tried to crush me. They just tried to put me down and crush me. And for a moment, I was tempted to just be useless and fall apart. But then I realized my family was depending on me, and if I fell apart, there wouldn't be anybody to look after them. And so I said, well, not only am I not going to fall apart, I'm going to go way above what I was. I'm going to go beyond that. We are going to have better meals. We are going to have more love in our family. Our children, I'm going to spend more time with my children. I'm going to talk to my children more. I'm going to love them more. And that is going to overcome. That is going to overcome these people who would try to crush me. So I would like to warn you about this attitude of depressing talk. And I had tried to read in the past one of my articles online that I had. It was about the Christian woman and refined speech. And it was about how women would never dream of swearing. In fact, they're very judgmental about anyone who lets out a swear word, to be completely condemning about it. But yet, in a way, they do the same thing when they crush other people with their negative view. When they insert in a conversation something that sullies it, something that is bad, something that is, you might say, immoral to talk about, or when they talk about worldly things in a conversation, or in order to bring everybody's mood down. Now, for example, you've been with some people, and we're all going to be visiting again, and we're going, or there's text and there's phone calls and there's your email, and there are those you'll be communicating with, and they do it too. And somebody will say something good that's going on in their life or that's happening, and the other person just feels obligated to show them the dark side of it. So they'll write back or call back, or when they're visiting, say right back, yeah, but that used to be really a bad thing. They feel they have to do that. That's because that's all the information that they have. They cannot seem to rise above that negative thinking. And I believe there was I tried to find this. It was about some people who had discouraged our hearts. That is not good. So I want to talk to you about how the negative thinker would read this. Now, I read it like this. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Now, the negative thinker would say, we are not crushed, but we're afflicted in every way. That's the way a negative thinker thinks. They have to say it that way so that the last thing you hear is the one that's going to stick in your mind and depress you. Okay, we are perplexed, but not driven to despair. The negative thinker would say, oh, we're not driven to despair at all, but we're perplexed. They have to they have to put a dig in there. They have to turn the knife. And it's just like saying, you've really done a good job today, but I saw a lot of spots you missed. And we play that with each other all the time just for fun, because we know that people are like that. We'll say you did a really good job, but you missed a lot of spots. And it's just a joke. Okay, every family has their own culture. Okay, so then it says, we are persecuted but not forsaken. Well, then the negative thinker would say, oh, I know we're not forsaken. God is with us, but we're sure are persecuted. Then it says, we are struck down but not destroyed. And then the negative thinker who wants to appear to be like you, who wants to be positive, will say, oh, we're not destroyed, but we're struck down. So to put the emphasis on to change it around and make it look like you're still down, you see. But you notice how this is phrased, and even in the Greek, it's phrased this way with the negative first and the positive second. It's the problem first and the solution second. So we have to be careful what we say. And I don't know if people just grow up in families where their parents, you learn your language from your parents, and when you learn your style of language too from your parents, and when they're talking, you pick this up, and it might be so bred in you, you don't even know you're doing it. You don't even know. But you know, the Bible talks about how we are supposed to be building one another up. You can't build someone up if you say, we are not crushed, but we're afflicted in every way. You cannot build someone up that way. But when you say it this way, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, you can build them up that way. If you say, we are not driven to despair, but we're perplexed, you can say, we're perplexed, but not given to despair. You're giving a solution. But there are some people that are just so clever at transposing this. They just automatically transpose everything. And I have had enough experience with having tea parties and ladies' Bible classes to remember some of the conversations. And someone was in one of the, this is just like 30 years ago, but there was one lady who was we were just talking, standing around talking, and one lady was mentioning president and how this president, it was back in the olden days, this president had gone up against some of the what you would say globalists. I don't know if they called them globalists at that time, but there was one of the presidents that had gone up against the globalists, and they had severely punished him, and he had lost the election because they were able to smear him so badly. And this woman looked at the other woman and said, well, but he was such a bad man anyway, like he deserved it or something. I think we have to be careful because we get people in our lives who have lived maybe on the other side, maybe lived in the world, and they come into our body, the body of Christ, and they say, someone will say, well, yeah, they're really nice people, but they've lived a terrible life. You know, we've got to give people a chance to grow. We've got to let them have their new life. We've got to let them have some confidence. We've got to build them up. We cannot go around telling people how bad somebody was all the time, or even if you're talking about historical figures, we have to be careful, especially when we're raising children, to be very careful not to focus too much on, I'm not saying we're not going to face reality, but in homeschooling I've learned this, and in raising children I've learned this too, that one of the kind of motto that I lived by was, if it doesn't harm them spiritually or physically, say yes, and don't always be a no person constantly, because it will make them difficult to live with. And if you're always, and I know myself, you know, I've been a child and I've been a teenager, and I know that especially as a teenager, there were a lot of teenagers that I knew that were very sensitive. You could hardly talk to them without them feeling glum, without them feeling put down. You had to be so careful. It's a very sensitive age, and but everybody's sensitive, and we learn that. We want to build them up. We want to give them hope. We want to give people hope and not say anything depressing if we can help it. But you're going to have to watch your language, because some of the ways that people will respond to you, let's say, for instance, you live with a critic or there are critics in your life. Sometimes you're feeding them the information that they can use to criticize you with. And so if you're careful with your speech to make it pleasant, wasn't there a little poem about that? I'm careful from day to day the words I say to keep them sweet because I never know which ones I'll have to eat. I forget what that is. I'll try to find it and publish that for you. So today I'm going to tell you a story of I wanted to show you my teacup, and then you should be working if you've got something to do. But this is the teacup I'm using today, and it goes with my blouse, and it's from it looks like something called Meritage, and I got it at Home Goods. It's fairly new. I like the teacups that are now being created from Home Goods. The saucers are a little heavy, probably so that they won't tip over, but they must be made by in a different way. But the teacups are fairly light, and they're more durable than an antique. So I really like this one. And also, I'm going to show you a teapot because I have a couple of teapots. I don't collect them; they're too big. But this is a teapot. It also came years ago from Home Goods and by Gracie's Teaware. It was about, I believe, $6 at the time. So I wanted to show you that. I don't use them as much. They're difficult to keep clean, and the tea gets cold eventually, even with a tea cozy. And I prefer just to use a tea bag in a cup of hot water. But like if I had a tea party, I would fill them because they expect it and they would use this. It's got kind of that glistening thing on it. I really like it. And so I will tell you, in the remaining time that I have, I will tell you something about where we grew up and where we went after that. It's just going to be very brief. I won't stay here very long. Today it's the end of the day, unfortunately. Today I have my book, Just Breathing the Air, and I don't want anyone to attempt to buy it. The price on it is wrong. And what happened was the publisher, I guess in some of these do-it-yourself publishing, they can put the books on Amazon. Of course, they have to raise the price in order to make money. So unfortunately, I have to go get all that corrected, and then I'll let you buy it. But I will tell you about it. Just Breathing the Air. It's the story of my childhood on the homestead in Alaska, and I did it from photographs that we had, and I told the story of my mother and father and how they got married. And my mother was in Canada, and she grew up in a family in Canada, and they came from Nova Scotia back in the 1800s. And then my father was from Texas, and he had been in the military, and he and a friend drove up. They wanted to go to Alaska to work at Elmendorf Air Force Base. And so on the way, they were stopped in a little town in Canada, in Alberta. I believe it was called High Prairie. I'm not sure, but it was during spring breakup. And breakup is, we used to call it spring breakup because that was when the snow turned to this watery slush, and you couldn't get through, and there were floods and everything. You couldn't get through the highways. And so he stayed there a while and met my mother. And she thought he was very interesting, and they became acquainted during that time. And when it cleared up, he went on to Alaska, but they kept a correspondence. And they agreed to meet in Whitehorse City, Yukon Territory, to get married, which they did. And my mother went to Whitehorse City a little early to wait, and she said that he kept writing. I don't know where they got their mail or how they arranged to get mail in those days, but she got letters from him that he was coming, but he was waiting for a part for his car because his car had broken down. And so she had to wait a little while, but it didn't bother her a bit. And I said, Mother, how could you have done that when you were only 18? And she said it was better than the way I was at home. They were extremely poor, and he had a car. So then they camped. When they got married, they camped, and they got married in the minister's home. And that's one of the reasons I was so attracted to the movie, The Magic of Ordinary Days. Livy looked a little like my mother, minus the red hair, and Ray was a little bit like my father. They just had the similar, my father was real tall, and my mother was a little shorter, and my mother had the look of Livy. She really did. And the truck and everything in that movie was just so similar to my parents. And so I continue this story is that they camped all the way to Anchorage, Alaska, from Whitehorse City. And I asked her, wasn't that hard or anything? And she said, no. She said, we were going to have a brand new house and a brand new start. Now that's more than some of us got, isn't it? These people that went up there, their husbands built them a custom-made house, and they were the only first ones that ever lived in it. Many of us have found apartments and homes that other people have lived in, but that was quite nice that she had her own house. And they didn't have debt in those days. You didn't really mortgage houses. People bought land, and then they got their lumber off of their own land to make their houses. And some people had sawmills, and they would pay someone to cut their wood into boards into lumber so they could build their house. And so then they cleared that land and they built a house. And I was born while they were homesteading. My mother became pregnant with me, and they went to California for the birth. And I don't know why they did that. I guess just they felt more confident or something, but they had 6 other children after me that were born in Alaska. And so then they homesteaded there. Many wonderful memories, many wonderful moments, golden summers and beautiful winters, and real hard times too, really sad, lonely times too. And so after about 25 years, my father, who was a hard worker, I mean, it would make you cry to know how hard the men worked up there. And in the summer he fished. He was a fisherman, and because he had been in the Navy, he always loved boats in the ocean, and his dream was to earn his living from a boat. And he subsequently became a captain of his own boat, and he fished for a living. But in the winters and part of the summers, he worked in the oil fields. And I still remember him bringing home an oily duck that had fallen into the water or the oil or something. He brought that duck home, and he cleaned it. I don't know what he cleaned it with, and I forgot to ask him before he died. I used to call him and ask him about these memories, and he had something that he was cleaning the oil off of this duck, and it was like mallard. And he cleaned this duck, and we kept it in the house and fed it, and he'd get more oil off of it all the time. They kept it alive. My mother and dad kept that duck alive, and I remember that. Well, when summer came, they released the duck into the lake, which our house had the view of a little lake, and they released that duck into the lake, and it never came back. And my mother thought for sure that duck was gone for good or had died. And but then another summer came along, and she was out in her little boat. My mother didn't have a diamond ring, but my father built her a little boat to row around in. And she used to go rowing around this boat, and she picked lilies. They're called water lilies at one end of the pond. And she saw that duck, and that duck came up to her, and she said she knew that was the duck because it was more of it was a different kind than some of the wild ones we had around. And it had just kind of assimilated with all those wild ducks out there. And she told this story in such a way. She told it at bedtime to us kids, even though we saw the whole experience. She'd tell it again. I got from that, it might be a good idea to tell your children of their own adventures. So whenever one of my youngest little grandchildren comes over, and I have a lot of things for him to do and really enjoy it, after he goes back home in a few days, I write him a letter. and I write him an illustrated letter showing him everything that he did. And I will say it was called When I Came to See You. And I said, when I came to see you, I rode in my little car. I have a little tractor, you know, that's a tricycle. I rode in my little car, and then I had tea, and then I sat on the swing, and after that I watered the plants, and I have it all illustrated in that little watering can. I have a little watering can that looks like an elephant, and I love toys. And I guess the reason I love toys, we were very deprived of toys. I think we had about one toy, each of us, when we were growing up, and I've always loved them. And I remember our parents were invited to a Christmas dinner at someone's house during the homestead days, and they were better off than we were, and their grandmother, the people's grandmother, had come and bought their little girl all kinds of toys, a little doll stroller, a little kitchen. That was back in the 50s, so that was quite expensive and rare. And the little girl wouldn't let me play with any of it. And so I made up for it. When I grew up, I started collecting really nice toys. And I have a Pottery Barn set of the sink and the refrigerator that I bought at Goodwill for $20. And it had some stickers and things on it. We cleaned it up and used it. But I'm making up for lost time with the toys. And so you don't have to live with regrets. You can just go and live it again. It's never too late to have happy childhood, kids. And so then, after about 25 years on the homestead, my father, who was such a hard worker, he always came home from the oil fields, or he'd work on the highway, or he'd work. The men all did this. They all just worked wherever they could get work. And and in those days, of course, there really weren't very many places for a woman to work anyway. These were very, very difficult outdoor jobs. Most people had large families, and so the women stayed home and looked after that, looked after the money, looked after everything. And I still remember how tired he was when he came home, but he had a subscription to National Geographic. And in 65, and he would come home, and he had a comfortable place to sit, and he would read out of that. And if one came, he was really interested. And the Australian government, around 1965, had put an advertisement inside, I don't know if it was an advertisement or an article, inside of National Geographic, and they wanted large families who had, where there were skilled people, like my father, people who knew how to operate heavy machinery, people who were also professionals, to come to Australia, and the Australian government would pay your way. But if you stayed 2 years, that would be that. But if you left before the 2 years was over, you had to pay them back. And that was they were going to populate Australia with, tried to bring it up, and in the 60s to try to modernize it a little bit and to make it a little more efficient. And they wanted, I don't know whose idea it was, but we and a lot of other families decided to go. And my father had always wanted to go, and he found that program and enrolled us in it, and we went in 1967. And they all have been there ever since. So that means they've all been there over 40 years. I came back in 1972 and got married. So that is all I want to tell you today. And that is not included in the book. The part about Australia is not included in the book. But the trouble with reading a book to you that I wrote is that there's always a backstory to every page. You know, I will read something, and then I'll have to tell you, yes, but this happened and that happened before that. If you really tell all the backstories and the surrounding things around an event, the book would have been, that thick, because it's telling a story of 25 years, So ladies, I hope that this entertained you while you were working, and I realize I've only been here about 40 minutes. Usually I'm here about 60. I think I have fixed my video maker so that it doesn't shut off, and I'm not as frightened of it. And I did get something in the mail, and I want to show it to you. It's from my friend in Idaho, and she's still writing these commonplace newsletters, and they're beautiful. So I wanted to show you that. I'll try to get a picture of it for you. I haven't stopped writing mine, but I have just been so bogged down with those books that I didn't want to stop and do something else. And my goal, and I just want to say, it's so beautiful the way she illustrates this. And I hope you're all doing some commonplace newsletters, just little bits and things, you know, put a little thought in it, a little poem, a little observation, a little recipe, a little saying. These are precious, and I really, really appreciate it. And because mine, I haven't been doing mine as well, I copy some of yours for my ladies class because I like to leave them with something. I like to hand around something. So thank you very much. Those of you that send your newsletter, your commonplace newsletters, I really, really appreciate it. I had something on my mind while I was showing this, trying to think of what it was. So as you go about your work today, think of it as something noble and put your trust completely in God, and keep praying and have faith that your prayers are heard. And I think the most important thing is, no matter what happens, if we always thought, you know, some of you that are older know that when you've had really tragic times in your life and you're just praying like crazy, God, don't let this happen, or God, please let this happen, and it doesn't quite go that way, that you will notice that it always works out. And especially if it makes you a more faithful person. Now, we can't control what God does or how he answers it, but we can control our devotion to him, and we can control our own communication with him. And that is what the most important thing is. That is the most beautiful thing. Now, what we have to be careful with is teaching. We have to make sure we teach our children that there is a difference between the people that we vote for. We need to, I know we always want to be so nice and we don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but there are some bad people in this world. And right now, this current political situation that we're up against is really being up against becoming a communist nation, a globalist nation, or a free nation. And we're throwing off the globalists, we're throwing off the communism, and they're not liking it, and they're scrunching down on us. Our own governor has decided to lock us up again. But I don't think that many people around here pay much attention to it. But you can tell who they are by the ones who are not giving you any freedom. That's how you can identify them. So this is a very serious situation. This is something really worth your time to pray for. At the same time, don't forget, childhood is very fleeting, and if you've got children at home, you cannot lose any days in their life worrying on this. Every day is so special to a child, and it's an eternity being a child. The time just doesn't go by very fast. You have to give them some make an effort to give them some childhood memories that are good during this time. So that I wish a lot of times that when there had been some kind of upheaval and I was listening to news, that I had decided to ignore it and to progress instead, to do something good instead. So if you're anxious, have you got up and got dressed? Have you had your prayer time? Have you had your wee spot of tea? Have you done your exercises? And have you read your Bible? You have a routine that you follow no matter what kind of tragedy is going on around here. And I always remembered reading a blog years ago, and I've been here since 2005, but years ago I was reading a blog, and someone who was in one of the European countries that was always besieged by war. She was there as they were with a church or something, and she had taken a picture of two elderly women sitting in their front yard drinking tea. And she said, and there was smoke in the background, and there was fire, and she said they were so used to that kind of thing going on all the time that they just decided to live their life and drink tea. So I think it's really important if you can't do anything about it. Now, we've done what we could, and you've done what you could, and well, now you can pray, but that's all you can do apparently. So then isn't that wonderful? God gave us that avenue. They can't take that away from us, can they? You know, I told you they took away our freedom. They took away our churches. They took away our friends. They took away our relatives. They put us under house arrest, and they took away our toilet paper. And there's something else here I wrote down, and I couldn't read my writing, but you know, they took away our. They took away our businesses. People had to shut their businesses down. So how can you trust these people? So, you know, with God's help and with our prayers, this is going to be changed. But it's not going to be easy. We're not used to this. We're not used to having these inconveniences and having this terror. We're not used to it. And it's a personal terror. We're just not used to it. But it's going to be hard, and it's going to be difficult. But if you'll just make sure it does not make you lose your faith and don't fall into despair. So I'm going to read this to you one more time. Remember not to be negative. Remember not to be contradictory. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifest in our bodies. You know, somebody ought to set that to music. That'd be really nice, wouldn't it? It's probably one of my favorites because it lifted me up so many times when I thought, all of you that are my age have probably been through an era where you thought your life was just going downhill. Maybe you lost your house because of the financial crash or something like that, or maybe your husband left you. Maybe one of your children went off the rails, or you know, I don't know, but I know that everybody that's been through something will probably say that they wish they had spent more time in prayer. So make sure you don't have any regrets on that score, okay? So ladies, before you go to bed, if you have children, gather them around you and ask them what all they enjoyed about today, and tell them, like, remember Gladys Aylworth in The End of the Sixth Happiness? She gathered these children around that she was teaching in a village how to read, and she said, now you have completed the first reader, and I'm going to give you the second reader. So now will you gather everyone around, and if there's just you, gather yourself around and say, okay, today I completed this and this and this, and now tomorrow I'm going to try to do this and this and this. So give your children a sense of progress. Give your children a sense of where we're going in life, and build them up and say, okay, we had a day. What all did we do today that is kind of that lifted other people up, lifted us up, and helped us grow? So ladies, before I say goodbye, I will say you can go on the left and you can subscribe to the blog so that when I post something, you can get it in your email, and it will have a video on it usually, because I'm pretty much going towards the videos. Videos are easier for me, and people can't paste and clip stuff and paste them on other sites, and you know what they do with them, and all the detractors. So videos are much easier for me, and besides, if you're a troll, you have to listen to it to find out, and you might learn something. You might learn something you need, and might bring you up out of your trollness. So ladies, I hope you have a lovely day tomorrow when you listen to this, and I will leave some links. I think that you might be interested in. Some of them are political, so I'll indicate that if you don't want to watch them. Stay away from the news, and I will tell you that even some of the so-called conservative news is no good. They've gone over to, a lot of them have gone over to the other side, the negative side. So God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.